And we're back. Welcome to Abstractable. I'm Ryan, and with me is Lachie. The Abstractable Podcast is for curious people with the desire to learn. The goal is to bring what might appear unattainable or reserved only to the already successful to anyone. In this two-part special episode related to remote work in light of COVID, we bring what we have implemented, learnt, and seen work well and provide plenty of food for thought along the way.
In part one, we discuss opportunities among the chaos that coronavirus has brought to the world. And we also discuss how things might look in a post-COVID world. In part two, we focus on the fact that now we're all settled into remote work. We want to talk more in depth about working from home and being an employee, manager, or business owner during this strange time. Stay safe out there, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
And we're back. How you doing, Lachie?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well.
Oh, that's
and I'm
awesome.
excited about today's episode because
yes,
we're going to hopefully bring some real punchy stuff and not get lost in conversation.
It's tough for us to do, but we're actually trying to do a short episode, so we'll see how we go.
So what we thought is, as we alluded to in the last episode of You Without Pants, is we said we want to do a little mini series on just some reflections and thoughts around what we've read and seen out there as ways of, either transitioning or bolstering the remote work way of life that, many people have probably fallen into. And so what we figured is it's now been about a month into, the coronavirus pandemic and hopefully most people should have landed somewhat in terms of where they're going to land. And whether that means for some people that the entire organisation has moved to fully remote, you're not working or working less and still getting paid, or unfortunately, some people have just simply lost their jobs, mate, which is terrible. But what we wanted to do is try and maybe provide a little bit of positivity around it as well. In this and hopefully shine the light on some opportunities that people might have. So
yeah, it's also probably important to note that there are significant amounts of people in the world who are experiencing this in a much more tragic way. Either someone they know or themselves are sick or have passed away. So we just wanted to say that up front. But hopefully a lot of the listeners aren't actually affected in that way and are just trying to battle through figuring out what the new world looks like to them.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't negate the just the seriousness and how much of a catastrophe it really is. So what we do know is that it's going to change some paradigms in the world, and there is opportunity here to change the entire trajectory of your life if that's what you want to do. And so one way to look at it is that people will have certainly gained some hours back in their weeks.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I've noticed this in my life for sure because I've barely left my house, and I think you're in the same boat, probably more so. The amount of free time that I don't spend driving or, say, going to meetings that I don't physically need to be at or don't really need to be at all. I found there's so much more time in my day. It's crazy. Yeah.
There's commute time. That's I would say 1 to 3 hours is most people. Working in an office or working on a site or something somewhere. So that's been gained back. Looking at again work, less meetings. There's surely been. We're at a point now where we're not just calling meetings to bring everyone into a room for no reason.
Do you think there's a point where there's some things that we've lost that, say, were bringing value that we're not doing in that sort of physical space?
100%, mate. It's very hard, which I'm sure we'll get onto. More so probably in part two of this little part one, part two we're doing. But there's definitely that human to human interaction and, face-to-face piece that you just I find it difficult to replace completely.
Yeah, I was feeling it probably on the weekend a bit. Just noticed my mood had dropped a bit after a little while of just really not going anywhere, and it can fluctuate a little for sure, particularly for people who are a bit more outgoing. And a lot of the people who work in the hospitality industry, which is the most affected, are that sort of effervescent, outgoing type of people. So, and in tourism too.
Yeah, it's probably a real struggle for the extroverts, particularly because the ones that really need that, the energy of other people to get their own. So, and undoubtedly, you'll often go out for maybe Friday night beers or something like that, or catch up with friends to go to the movies or trivia or something, those social events, and they take, they can genuinely be half a day's worth of time. And so now I'm finding I'm actually talking to my friends just as much, if not even more in some cases. But because we haven't buffered it out with many beers in between, or just deciding we're going to have a full night of it, then you've got all this weirdly time back. It's almost like the quality time has increased.
So what can you do with the time?
Yeah. So as a rounded number, there's maybe we thought about 8 hours to maybe even 50 hours, depending on where you fit in the schema of different situations. And so there's definitely time there for people. So maybe some ways to think about it is, scratch that itch. Is this a time to make a bold career move? And that could be a bold career move at the company you're already at. It could be a bold career move that in a completely different company, moving to something else that you thought you'd wanted to try, different industries, all those type of things. It's also an opportunity to do a lot of, there's so many good online learning platforms out there.
Yeah.
LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, edX, Skillshare.
One of the Seth Godin courses, which I found really good, the marketing seminar. And yeah, I think that you're right. It is a time that you can spend reflecting if you're able to calm yourself down enough, which is something I struggle with. I'm someone who's pretty anxious, so I always want to be moving around and doing stuff, but I've been trying to slow myself down to really think about things and take the time to do that more strategic style of thinking about it's a great time to compare what your time's like now to before, because comparison is the way of learning, is the way you learn. So you can kind of think about that. The other thing I could probably relate to is there's a book by Cal Newport called Deep Work. And if you haven't read it, it's probably a good time to crack it open and have a look at it, because it talks about spending a lot of time uninterrupted doing work and batching your really small tasks and doing your deeper work and deeper thinking is super, super productive, and in the modern world is very rare. And this is a time you can get a lot of deep work done.
Yeah, it's amazing just some of the progress that can happen. But it really is about showing up and doing it, because it's very easy to kind of just settle into spending that time, on Instagram or, watching a couple of shows on Netflix or something, sucked into another series. And, it might be a better way to look at it as though that time has, been given to you to, take advantage of, as you would if you were at work and, you had to be there until 6:30 or something.
Another book that we actually have an episode about is The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And this is a situation that book applies to quite a lot, and he's really talks a lot in that about accepting what's happening to you, but you still have some agency in any situation. So he talks about action a lot. It's kind of acceptance and action and really cracking on and doing something that is going to move you forward in some way. If you can't go through something, go around it. It's not about positive thinking that everything's going to be fine and let's not worry, but, it is trying to find the opportunity in a situation, even if it's a shocking one.
Yeah. And it's all well and good, spruiking advice and things, but at the end of the day, everyone's going to have their own answers to to these questions.
100%. We can only say kind of what's helped us and hope it helps someone else, but everyone's an individual. And
so, maybe some questions to reflect on to help people out are, am I actually working less? And so there might be a little bit more space that you've noticed, but you just can't point the finger as to why you feel like there's a little bit more space in your week or something. And based on what we said earlier, there's probably just been extra time gained. Am I enjoying these lessened work hours? Maybe that's something I want to continue moving forward, working 4 days a week rather than 5 days a week. I realize that I actually don't need as much to get me through the week. Maybe, do I need all those things that I previously had? Going out for dinner 4 times a week. Maybe we don't need to do that anymore. And then for the ones that are a little bit more ambitious or, have that creative hunch somewhere inside to be, maybe do some writing or painting or, who knows, then the question is, if not now, then when? Because now's a prime opportunity to start having a look at that type of stuff.
I'll have to think about those myself.
So so hopefully as a result of all this, there might be some positive paradigm shifts that come out, not just the uplift in, robustness and things, which you might have a few words on, Lachie.
Yeah, so I thought we would take a crack at looking at a couple of things that are going to change, that we feel quite confident will. If you've listened to episode 2 of this podcast, you'll know that we're not big fans of bold predictions. And one day we'll do super forecasting, which is another book on prediction as well, once we get around to it.
It's a bit controversial, mate.
What's that?
That one, super forecasting.
Yeah.
I know Taleb's not a fan, so.
Yeah, but he doesn't like much that doesn't agree with him. So, but I think it's pretty obvious international travel's in deep trouble for quite a long time. So, I mean, the UN's predicting a 30% drop annually, which seems massive unders. It's a $500 billion drop in the industry. But then we kind of were thinking that people would still go on holidays, but it'll be within our own country. So that domestic tourism might pick up some of that slack. And the tourism industry is a massive driver of, the economy. So once the borders do open, there will be a lot of stimulus that's pumped into that industry and all that goes along with it, whether it's the marketing for it and all those sort of things. So
I really feel for the Aussie, the Aussie tourism industry there, mate, because they had the bushfires and they were just ramping up the campaign to, come visit local, or get around Australia. We're open for business. And then that would have been January, February, I think that campaign was kicking off. And then all of a sudden, everything shut down again for them. So they've had a real tough time.
Yeah, it's crazy. A couple of big black swans there. Distributed work, here to stay, Ryan? What do you think?
I think this will certainly be the nudge that some companies have been needing. It might have been one of those things that's just been put on the back burner, but now the hand has been forced, for better or for worse. And so, there's many companies that are operating, in a local office that can certainly take advantage of some remote aspects, even if it's not fully distributed and fully remote.
I can see myself saying something like, oh, look, I'm going to work the next 2 days from home. I really need to smash this out. I can see that becoming a bit more manageable. I think that the time for flying interstate for one meeting, that's over. Anyone who used to do that, forget that. Even driving across the city, I think face-to-face meetings are going to be, but I mean, it's not going to change it forever. I don't think. We're still social creatures, so maybe it's a 20% shift or something like that.
See, I don't think those meetings will stop, because those meetings are typically done by, the big wigs, and I think they still want to rack up their bloody Qantas points and spend the company money on travelling to Queensland for a day and then take advantage of another few days to soak up some sun.
You cynic, I like
far too cynic, hey?
A couple other ones, infrastructure spending, big increases coming, bit of pain for the next 2 months, but I mean, Scott Morrison in Australia was saying more roads fixed and bridges built, and in Victoria where I live, when we get to the other side of this, the biggest construction boom in the state's history will need to be even bigger. So that's Dan Andrews, our Premier. And again, usually I think the governments are going to plunge themselves further into debt, and things like building new hospitals or upgrading healthcare facilities becomes a very easy thing to do politically, I think.
This is an interesting one, right? Because just talking Melbourne, one of Melbourne's biggest, Victoria's biggest exports is international education. And that's obviously going to take a massive hit.
Yes.
And so and it was also predicted that Melbourne was going to be continually growing, to certainly exceed Sydney. So do you think that's going to have impact? Do you think those things will change, or?
I'm a little cynical about the international education stuff. I think that the universities use that to plump up the coffers in a way that is, I don't know, feels a bit profit motive rather than what they're supposed to be for, which is education for people. But hey, that's just me. I do feel that it will suffer somewhat because of those people live here and they do all sorts of different, like a normal citizen would. If you're living somewhere, it pops up the other parts of the economy, so it brings a lot of money in. But I personally think it will keep going. There may be some short-term damage there, but again, anything that's going to boost the economy, the government will, if not support to keep it at the same level, they will probably go further and try and increase it. So long-winded answer is I think it'll continue.
Because that's essentially the driver to enable all that infrastructure, not so much the education, but the population growth of Melbourne.
Yeah. I think if the economy wants to keep going forward, we can't afford to stop growing the population. And Australians don't have enough children to do that. So immigration's an essential part of the economy, but also sort of the cultural diversity and what makes it a great place to live.
Yeah.
So some black swan effects are governments are now realising that they need to be more robust and silo themselves out a bit more rather than so there'll be stockpiles of things after this. Probably not the right things because the next one won't be the same as this one, but countries will look inwards a lot more and onshore manufacturing will happen for essential supplies in Australia, definitely. The Prime Minister's already flagged that also.
Well, I was just going to say, just to clarify on what you're talking about there, Lachie, obviously COVID, has a massive impact on the lungs. And so, the ventilators and all the other things that go to assist that kind of rehabilitation process may not be relevant for the next whatever it is that comes along. So they need to think about what are the things that we need to enable to be self-sufficient in some ways.
Yeah, maybe it's certainly not saying that stuff's not very important. It's obviously critical.
Yeah.
But the next one might be a solar flare that causes an EMP that kills all of our electronic equipment. And we'll be thinking, why don't we keep things in the paper stockpiled down in the government under the Parliament House or something? We're too reliant on technology. It's just, who knows?
Mate, you might have to start building your fucking bunker.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. We'll see you for part 2.